crazy how many teams had a chance to win. The Ripper GC went from 9 back to leading by 2 to near the cellar again late in the day. It was so volatile, counting 4 scores. It was pretty nuts, but you know, the cliques have been cellar dwellers for basically 2.5 seasons, and they come out victorious today. That's awesome.
It'll be the summer of the cliques, definitely. So, like I said, there's definitely more to come from us.
It was a magnificent ball striking performance.
Yeah, you know, I got to speak to someone in his camp before he teed off this morning, and they said to me that he is finally feeling extremely comfortable out here. He's not thinking about any swing thought. He's going out there, he's swinging so freely, and it certainly showed today. The way he drove the ball, the way he hit his irons, and even in his putting as well.
Yeah, and lives in Texas, went to school in Texas. His tour win on the PGA Tour was here in Houston, which is Texas, and now his first live win, Texas.
Honestly, it was just a matter of playing solid coming down the stretch. I think there was a switch there on 15 that I made birdie, he made bogey, and I just knew that I had to power in pretty much, and it was mine. The 18 I made bogey, but it worked. He played unbelievable, and he put pressure all the way to the end, and it was a good battle. I love playing here. Obviously, Texas treats me well. It's my adopted home state, so I'm just happy to get it done again in Houston.
Hello and welcome to a Tuesday live right here on the early line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination and consume everything all across the grid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. We are here together live for the next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern Time. A Tuesday morning at the end of an NBA campaign. A Tuesday morning where we crown a new NBA champion, and that is the Boston Celtics. For an 18th time in its franchise history, the most ever in the history of the association. We look back on game number 5 of the 2024 NBA Finals last night in Beantown to the coronation of the Seas. What this year means in the history of this franchise, what this season's accomplishment means in the history of the NBA. We'll look at what went wrong for the Dallas Mavericks and a historic postseason for Boston. We've got another Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final on this Tuesday evening in Sunrise, Florida as well. We will preview that to see if Lord Stanley's Cup will be passed around on this Tuesday as well. And a lot to get to from a Monday card in Major League Baseball, including Grimace being the greatest New York Met history has ever known. All of that and more, Donnie Rightside, over these next 3 hours.
Yeah, break out the Mets bats. By the way, I got 3 good looks here for the New York Mets for RBI shots tonight, so make sure you stay tuned to that. And a lot of good heated-up environments in Major League Baseball, but none heated up more than the NBA Finals, which came to an end last night in game number 5. And what we'll talk about is, was game number 4 a true fluke? It seemed that way because from jump, the Boston Celtics were the better basketball team. But there's a lot of things to look forward to, which included, as you said, NHL game number 5. Could we see a game number 6 head back to Edmonton? We'll find out tonight. So still in championship mode right here on the early line.
After losing by nearly 40, make that 38 points to be exact, on Friday night in Dallas in game number 4, Boston was back home inside TD Garden, looking to win championship number 18 in front of the home faithful, and that's exactly what they did. 106-88. The Celtics victorious in game number 5, an NBA champion here in 2023-24. They win by 18. They cover easily as a 7-point favorite in the NBA's best team all year long. Best regular season record, co-favorites to win the NBA title before the season even got underway. Solo favorites about midway through the campaign, and odds-on favorite in the opening round of this postseason. Boston wins the most championships we have ever seen in the history of the National Basketball Association. Make that trophy number 18 last night in Beantown.
And well-deserved. This wasn't one like, hey, we didn't expect it coming into the season. This is one of those rare instances where you had the best team with the best odds on opening night cruise all the way through the regular season and absolutely cruise through the NBA playoffs. And we were thinking that the Eastern Conference Finals, look at that. Maybe they didn't get a matchup we're supposed to. Either was supposed to be the Sixers or the Knicks or the Milwaukee Bucks. It didn't matter here. They were a hot knife through butter in the playoffs. So whoever they went through, congratulations to the Boston Celtics, even if we're going to talk about a little controversy on who actually was supposed to raise that MVP trophy last night.
That really is the only debate and discussion because Boston was expected to be here. This core, led by Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, defined by reaching this level of success, this ceiling, the mountaintop in the association, an NBA champion. And that's exactly what they did. Only 19 games in this postseason run. 3 gentlemen's sweep in just 5 games, and a series sweep in only 4 in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Boston Celtics win championship number 18. A ton to get to and react to from last night inside TD Garden. But now we go Major League Baseball. The New York Mets, 14 runs yesterday in the series opener in Arlington against the Texas Rangers. It has been detailed. I'm sure you have seen it on social media. Since Grimace threw out the first pitch on Wednesday at Citi Field, the Amazons are a perfect 6-0. New York 10-4 in the month of June. Don't count out those Mets just yet.
No, don't. And Lindor had 4 hits last night and 2 RBI. You had Nimmo with 4 RBI last night. You had Alonso with 2 RBI. You had Stewart with 3 RBI. You had Alvarez with 2 RBI. This team is actually starting to hit now. And they look dead in the water about a week and a half ago, but Grimace gets things kicked. Look, hey, man, Grimace associated with McDonald's. Get 2 double cheeseburgers out there, maybe a triple cheeseburger, a large fry. You got some apple pies across the street, man. They are feeding the Mets right now. 14-2. I actually picked the wrong side yesterday to get some RBI props because I like Simeon. No RBI. I like Adolis Garcia. No RBI. Matter of fact, they didn't even get a hit between the two of those, and yet the Mets out here with 22 hits yesterday. Say it ain't so, Mets. Are we adding on at the deadline at this point? Goodness.
The Mets were the underdog yesterday in Texas, as you might expect. Man. I think Uncle Steve Cohen, the owner of the New York Mets, is going to buy Grimace's rights away from the McDonald's family to keep him permanently up in Flushing. The Mets have won 10 of their last 12. Meanwhile, the Rangers, the reigning World Series champions, have lost 7 of their last 10. Philadelphia, last night, needing to bounce back for the Phils. As Donnie predicted, there would be some RBI shots, including a Schwarber in the return of Trey Turner. 9-2 the victory for the Phils yesterday at home in the bank.
Isn't that nice? A guy now hitting number 2 in your lineup. No longer like a 217 guy like Castellanos. You bump up there and you get Turner now up to 345 after those 2 base hits here. Kyle Schwarber, as you said, with 2 home runs and 4 RBI, really setting the tone. And I said this, you go on the road to London. You have all those days there, a couple days off. You stay there, you travel back, you go to Boston, you go to Baltimore. You just needed some home cooking for the Phillies to get back on the right side, and they did that yesterday with an easy 9-2 victory over the Padres. Good signs coming, good hitting weather. We'll see if that continues today in Philadelphia.
Yeah, 2 home runs from Kyle Schwarber. Alec Boehm, by the way, 3 of 5 yesterday, a 3-run shot, 3 ribbies. He continues to have a sensational season. Skeens Day number 7 yesterday inside PNC Park in Pittsburgh. And the rookie continues to deliver 6 innings of work, only allowing a single earned run. He improves his record to 4-0. That is Paul Skeens, and lowers his ERA to a 2.29 mark. 4-1 the victory for the Buccos in Skeens Day number 7. The Pirates have won 6 of the 7 starts in Paul Skeens' Major League Baseball career.
We started this day talking yesterday with that total at 8 runs. It actually got to 8.5 late in the day. I told you I like Spires on the mound. He got hit around a little bit, and there was 5 total runs on the board after 2 innings. I'm like, man, what a bozo play that was yesterday, only to see that final score at 4-1. And Skeens was tremendous again. 6 innings pitched, 6 hits, 1 earned run, 7 Ks here. He's been everything that we thought he would be early on, and good to see the Pittsburgh Pirates now trying to climb back over 500.
Yeah. The NL Central, a lot of teams hovering around that 500 mark. could make for a competitive summer. But right now, the Brewers an 8-game lead atop that division. Elsewhere on the diamond, a doubleheader in Omaha. In the nightcap, Texas A&M knocks off Kentucky 5-1 to stay in the winner's bracket in bracket pool number 2. The Aggies 1 win away from the men's CWS finals. And in the opener of the day in Omaha, Florida holds on, winning 5-4 to eliminate NC State. Jack Caglione, who got the start, actually had to leave with some right forearm discomfort, but still hit a home run in the baseball game. Jackie Caggs does it all for the Gators.
There you go. Maybe he bought a round of Jell-O shots for the good people there in there cheering from Gainesville. You never know at that point, but it's been fun to watch this play out. And I was watching it live on TV with that blast. I thought it was a grand slam at first, but didn't realize they had a run score before that. But nonetheless, helped them with the victory.
Huge day yesterday in a historic upset at the Euros. Slovakia knocks off Belgium 1-0. It is the largest upset in Euros history based on FIFA rankings. Slovakia as a nation, 48th. Belgium, number 3. Slovakia wins outright as a plus 600 money line dog.
Belgium's got good beer. Hey, rest in your sorrows there. Drink a couple pints for us. How about that?
And Kylian Mbappe, despite France winning its opener, did break his nose. Hard Knocks is just becoming too much. In-season Hard Knocks is going to feature all 4 of the teams in the AFC North. There's your update. We react to a historic night in Boston. The Celtics, an NBA champion, up next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
You got Porzingis, you got Holiday, you got Derek White. You got, literally, I would say what? 5 guys that can get you 20 points in a game?
I know people say it's, only one guy. I don't believe that, Coach, that, one guy, those days are over, in my opinion. Like, a Bill Russell, a Wilt Chamberlain.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
You rarely see a tournament champion, if I'm not mistaken, have a triple bogey on any hole and win a championship, and he still did it. To me, I mean, that was really the story.
You look at his last 8 starts, going back to the Arnold Palmer Invitation. His finishes are first, second, first, 8th, second, first.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
A new NBA champion has been crowned in the 2023-24 NBA campaign, but maybe new is not the correct word to use for the Boston Celtics. Championship number 18 secured last night, the most ever in the history of the National Basketball Association, with a 106-88 decisive victory in game number 5. Boston closed as a 7-point favorite. They easily cover the number. Total closed at an over-under of 210 and a hook, and it stays under. All 5 games in a short NBA championship set stay under their pre-game number. The Boston Celtics, championship number 18. And for this core, led by Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, the two guys to get selected number 3 overall, Brown in 2016, Tatum in 2017, they finally lead Boston to the top of the mountaintop once again. An NBA champion for the first time since 2008.
And a completely deserving champion. You had great basketball players, a great coach, a great winning environment. You took care of your business on home court. You dominated the NBA in the regular season. You dominated the NBA in the postseason. This was a team as you are going to find all the way through. And as we say, they're probably not done yet. We got a pretty good poll out there on the SportsGrid Network here this morning on a Fade the Public if they are actually going to be able to repeat and who's going to stop them right now. They have the money. They have the young talent here at this point. But if we focus on game number 5 in itself, this is probably what we expected. And also, I talked about this yesterday. Being a handicapper, some of the things that are really hard to quantify are, was that game an actual fluke or my eyes deceiving me because the Dallas Mavericks really took apart the Boston Celtics and you figured maybe they could get some momentum going on the road, but that certainly wasn't the case. We expected Kyrie to step up. He didn't feel like doing that in Boston. It was almost like, I feel so bad the way I treated Boston when I was there. I'm just going to hand them an NBA championship. It's really the way it felt. 5 of 16 from the floor, 41 minutes, minus 11 on the court, only 15 points. When we were saying like, hey, Kyrie got that mojo in game 3 and game 4, but he's like, you know what? Going back to Boston, I don't feel like I need that same mojo. I also said yesterday, the one guy I knew that was going to have a high usage rate was going to be Luka Doncic. 12 of 25 from the floor, 43 minutes out there, 12 rebounds and 5 assists. It wasn't good enough. Why? Because once again, he didn't get the support from his teammates that he needed, unlike the Boston Celtics, who were tremendous on defense yesterday. And what did I tell you? I didn't know if I liked the side. We thought the Boston Celtics would win. I liked the under a lot more than the side, and they played unbelievable defense. You knew right away, 18 points in that first quarter. The Boston Celtics meant business yesterday, and that business was a championship.
Absolutely so. And Donnie, we said all along in the quick preview of this series, and it wasn't exactly quick, as we had a full week off from when the Mavericks won the Western Conference crown, 10 days from when Boston won the Eastern Conference crown, until the start of this NBA Finals, that the Dallas dynamic duo of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, specifically Luka Doncic being the best player in this series, so far had to outweigh Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown that Boston's better balance in depth could not make up the margin. Never really happened in this series. And you look up and down the stat sheet yesterday. Jrue Holiday, 15 points, 11 boards. The best plus-minus, a plus 21 for the Celtics. Great on the defensive end of the floor. Derek White chipped a tooth and made 4 triples, as he did consistently throughout this NBA championship series. We even saw Kristaps Porzingis battle through the torn retinaculum to play in game number 5. And Peyton Pritchard, the king of half-court buzzer beaters, did so again, sending the game to a 20-point lead for the Celtics into that halftime break. Boston was the best team all year long, and they get the crowning achievement of championship number 18, the most ever in NBA history. But it'd been a long time in Beantown since the Celtics were the NBA champs, since 2008. Yesterday was June 17th, 2024. The Celtics' last championship back in 08, June 17th, 2008. A big day in Massachusetts. And the Boston Celtics, Donnie, cover as a 7-point home favorite. At home this year, 52 games inside TD Garden. Make that 46-6 straight up for Boston. 28-21-3 against the spread. Booked as the favorite side in all 52 home games this season.
It is amazing, too, because you're supposed to be playing under the same guidelines in the NBA and professional sports. Salary caps, draft picks, you have to operate in those parameters. And it's amazing to me to find out, like the one thing we talked about the Dallas Mavericks for the past, 2 years? Boy, if we can just get somebody who can run with Luka, that team should be okay. They go out and get Kyrie Irving, which is great. So you have 2 superstars at the top of your lineup. But we still kept asking those questions. If the 2 superstars aren't running right, or at least one of them isn't, who can step up? We never really had that opinion. And maybe it's unfair to say that about the Dallas Mavericks, Mavericks is why they made it to the NBA Finals. That's an achievement in itself. But when we talk about roster construction and how to put a team together, like look at the Celtics, 2 superstars in Tatum and Brown. You have a bona fide floor general in Drew Holiday that plays defense and does the nasty stuff, but still the ability to shoot 14 times, make 7 of those attempts, and get 11 rebounds. And then, there's that guy, Kristaps Porzingis, that you picked up as well. Another all-star caliber player to go along with a solid bench of guys that can shoot coming up there at any moment here, as we saw with Hauser and Pritchard throughout this playoff run. So congratulations to the Boston Celtics front office. They didn't just get lucky with draft picks here.
Right.
The construction of this roster and bringing guys in, even though they weren't drafted by your own team, and fitting them in, that's unbelievable, man. So Porzingis and Holiday, unbelievable additions here. Much, much better than probably would have turned out with Marcus Smart, who I know was a fan favorite in Boston. So credit Brad Stevens and that organization. It's tremendous, man.
And they put together this organization, this roster, constructed to reach this level of success. Co-favorites before the NBA season after the acquisition of Kristaps Porzingis to win an NBA title. Pretty quickly into the year after Milwaukee suffered its struggles, even though they weren't so much struggles, but just a turbulent opening half, the Celtics were a solo favorite at a short plus 260 price by the time we reached the All-Star break in the middle of February. When the playoffs began, they were nearing even money. By the end of the opening round, into minus money, and entered the NBA Finals DRS as a minus 225 series outright favorite. What was expected, now made official, the Boston Celtics, the NBA champs.
Yes, and no doubt about it either. And that's what we're talking about. It was so much fun to watch Boston throughout the season because the expectations were so high, Ben. And what did they do? They just kept delivering on those expectations. And I love the fact that they really handled the Dallas Mavericks in the finals, because then we can't say like, oh, well, see, they finally met a good team here and they couldn't handle it. They wiped the Mavericks off of the court, man. One of the better seasons you're going to see, the Boston Celtics 2023-2024.
We'll continue to talk about where the Celtics fall in NBA history next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
You got Porzingis, you got Holiday, you got Derek White. You got literally, I would say what? 5 guys can get you 20 points in a game?
I know people will say it's, only one guy. I don't believe that, Coach, that, one guy, those days are over, in my opinion. Like, a Bill Russell, a Wilt Chamberlain.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
You rarely see a tournament champion, if I'm not mistaken, have a triple bogey on any hole and win a championship, and he still did it. To me, I mean, that was really the story.
You look at his last 8 starts, going back to the Arnold Palmer Invitation. His finishes are first, second, first, 8th, second, first.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The most championships in NBA history. The Boston Celtics as a franchise make that number 18 last night inside TD Garden in front of the Beantown faithful. They move in front of their longtime historic rivals, the LA Lakers, who have 17. The Golden State Warriors, 7. The Chicago Bulls have 6. And the San Antonio Spurs with 5. The Boston Celtics, the most ever in the history of the association, but this the first since 2008. Only 2 in this millennium for the C's, but they accomplished that feat that had long eluded them and this core last night. And it's not just the most NBA titles in history for any franchise. This year's 2023-24 Celtics organization will be remembered in historic fashion. 16-3 in 19 playoff games for this year's group of C's. That is the 10th best win percentage all time in NBA playoff history. The second team since we went fully to a best of 7. That means 16 wins in an NBA playoff in the 2002-03 season. Only the Golden State Warriors, who went 16-1 during the 2017 postseason, have a better mark than this year's Boston Celtics team. History in many ways last night inside TD Garden.
Yes, there was. And also, like, sometimes you have to take these championships with a grain of salt when you see the total amount of those, because a lot of those happened in the past. But having said that about the Celtics organization itself, like, there's been dregs of the NBA with teams that just have stunk out loud, Ben, for 50 straight years, it feels like. The Celtics were never that organization. I was like, boy, they had a terrible 7-year run where they're at the bottom of the Eastern Conference or the Atlantic Conference. That's never been the case. They've always been a competitive franchise. And if you want to look at those superstar championship-laden teams in the 60s, the Larry Bird era in the 80s, and then moving through into the 90s, I know there wasn't a lot of success championship-wise, but into the 2000s with the KG teams and all that stuff, and now leading up to this team that's won a championship. It's been a great organization for a long, long time, and rightfully so. 18 championships in their history. And also, let's remind ourselves, it's not as if like these 18 championships actually date back to the early 1900s, like let's just say Major League Baseball. It's been fairly new, but this has always been a competitive franchise with superstar players all throughout, and deservedly so. 18 now, ahead of 17 for the Los Angeles Lakers in that great rivalry.
And just 2 for Boston since 1986, but they had been close. This year was their 3rd consecutive appearance in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Celtics had made the ECF 4 of the last 5 years, into the NBA Finals twice in the past 3 seasons, came up lame in only 6 games against Golden State 2 years ago, but now to the top of the NBA as a champion. And our debate, after it became pretty clear with Boston holding a 3-0 series advantage that the Celtics were going to win, number 18, at a certain point in this series, was who's going to win NBA Finals MVP? Entering game number 3 in Dallas last week, Jason Tatum was the favorite. Tatum was the favorite entering the series. But after last night, despite Tatum scoring 31 points and being Game 5's leading scorer, only finishing just a few assists away or a few boards away from a triple-double, Jaylen Brown, who scored 21 points in game number 5, the NBA Finals MVP. I know it's not all decided by the 5th and final game. I'm still trying to find in this series where Jaylen Brown was so far ahead of Jason Tatum to be the odds-on favorite to win the NBA Finals MVP entering last night's Game 5.
And by the way, like midway through the game, multiple sites out there, which included the FanDuel Sportsbook, had a heavy favorite price on Jason Tatum, and rightfully so, because if you're telling me the best player on the team, it is Jason Tatum. We know that. He has a better, more points, more assists, and rebound average in the series. In the pivotal closeout game, he was the best player on the court, and he didn't win the MVP. And also, I might not have even had a problem with this, man. If we were heading in to this finals game, game number 5, and you said, hey, look at this, the FanDuel Sportsbook, plus 100 Jaylen Brown, plus 110 on Tatum. Ooh, this is going to be close all the way through. Let me see the way it plays out. But the fact that we kept looking at who is such a heavy favorite in Brown, I just couldn't figure it out. I said, you know what? It might just come down to tonight. Who Tatum was the better player. And you're right, almost had a 30-point triple-double and still didn't win the MVP. I don't know who's voting on it. I don't know what they saw, and I don't know why he was such a heavy favorite. But there you go. Heavy favorite, end up winning it, even though I don't think he should have won it.
Tatum was atrocious in both the first two games in Boston. There was no mincing words. He was 12 of 38 from the floor. That's 31.5% from the field. When you are the superstar, when you want to be considered one of the 5 or 10 best players in the NBA, that cannot be your performance. But still in the final 3 games, Tatum found his stroke. We'll talk about it up next as we continue our reaction to the NBA Finals.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
You got Porzingis, you got Holiday, you got Derek White. You got, literally, I would say what? 5 guys can get you 20 points in a game?
I know people say it's, only one guy. I don't believe that, Coach, that, one guy, those days are over, in my opinion. Like, a Bill Russell, a Wilt Chamberlain.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
You rarely see a tournament champion, if I'm not mistaken, have a triple bogey on any hole and win a championship, and he still did it. To me, I mean, that was really the story.
You look at his last 8 starts, going back to the Arnold Palmer Invitation. His finishes are first, second, first, 8th, second, first.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
There is no debate who the NBA's best team was this year. That was the Boston Celtics, 64-18 throughout the regular season, a 16-3 postseason mark, the 10th best win percentage in the history of the NBA playoffs. 80 wins in total for the Boston Celtics, becoming just the 13th team in the history of the association to post at least 80 wins, regular season plus playoffs combined in NBA history. But what is the debate, at least that we will have here? Who should have won NBA Finals MVP? Does it really matter? Jason Tatum screamed, "We did it!" So he was just happy they won a championship last night in Boston. But Jaylen Brown, who won the Eastern Conference Finals MVP hardware, also taking home the NBA Finals MVP award as well. And Jaylen Brown was good and consistent throughout the NBA Finals. He scored at least 20 points in 4 of the 5 games, all 3 in Boston, where in the first 2 games of the series, Jason Tatum fell flat for the Celtics, 31.5% from the floor in games 1 and 2. But on the crowning night, inside TD Garden, bringing home the crowning achievement of championship number 18, Tatum was Boston's best player, the best player on the floor. 31 points, 11 dimes, 8 boards, just 2 rebounds shy of a triple-double, but fell short of winning Finals MVP.
Yeah, it was an interesting, way all the way around because I understand how the locker room dynamics work. And those two guys are very competitive. And they were so competitive over the past 2 to 3 years, we were led to believe that they can't play with each other because they're so competitive at that point. And that competitiveness turned into a championship. But it is kind of interesting. And, in those quiet moments, which we won't see on camera where they're working out, like Jaylen Brown just has that one up on him now. Eastern Conference Finals MVP, NBA Finals MVP. You couldn't have done this without me. I was the star catalyst, like just prodding like one of your friends, which they will do. But having said that, they were both equally deserving, and the ultimate prize is the championship. You put that ring on your finger, it solidifies it. Nobody's going to look at the Boston Celtics and say anything less of, well, they probably could trade away Jason Tatum and still be fine. No, he is your best basketball player, and we understand that. But it's just odd the way it worked out, where I just thought all the way through those games, like 3, 4, and 5, I understand the competitive nature between the two, and I thought Jason Tatum would rise to the occasion, and he did. It's just really hard to quantify. Like, I know in a quiet space here, Tatum's going to love winning that championship, smoking the cigars, going through the parade, the duck boats, and all the champagne that's going to be flowing. But deep down, he's got to be asking that question. Look, I understand I didn't play well in games 1 and 2, but I averaged more points, assists, and rebounds, and in the closeout game was the dominant figure, and I didn't win this. What do I have to do to actually win this? And again, on the grand scale of things, it's not that big of a deal, but us as handicappers just watching that price point and scratching our head, and I guess there was something to those price points there. Two great players, equally deserving of MVP. I was just surprised that it didn't go to Tatum because we look at statistics here, and we look at what we just saw last year, and Tatum was tremendous.
And Jaylen Brown was great in Game 1. He was Boston's leading scorer. But Kristaps Porzingis was probably the Finals MVP of that game. Jrue Holiday was probably the MVP of Game number 2. So it really was a toss-up from that point on. I could understand the argument for Jaylen Brown in the Eastern Conference Finals, despite Tatum figuring things out in the final 2 games against Indiana. Brown had the defensive play at the end of Game 1, hit the corner 3 to force overtime against the Pacers. There were those magical moments, not as many of them throughout the NBA Finals. And again, maybe we're splitting hairs. Maybe if you ask those two who have been together since 2017, Brown drafted 3rd overall in 2016, Tatum the following year, number 3 overall as well. They have been the core of this franchise in Beantown. They would tell you it doesn't really matter. We won the Larry O'Brien Trophy that we will be judged and evaluated by. Just an interesting distinction overall in an NBA Finals that really did not have many debates. We are getting word, because of a new rule in the association, that as soon as the NBA Finals in a season comes to a close, you can start contract negotiations with guys currently on your roster, that Jason Tatum is expected to sign a 5-year, $315 million contract at $63 million annually. That would be the richest in NBA history, moving past Jaylen Brown, who signed that 5-year, $304 million extension that actually averages out to a little bit less over the entire duration of that contract extension. So Jason Tatum, a little bit more moolah in the bank account maybe than hardware that Jaylen Brown possesses.
Yeah, and by the way, nobody's going to feel bad for Wick Grossbach, who's the owner of the Boston Celtics. But when you do that Forbes check-in list here, he's bottom 5 in the NBA for net worth. Now, granted, when your net worth is still north of $500 million, nobody feels bad for you. But as you just pointed out, you got 2 players on your roster with $300 million contracts. And let's not forget the big money that Jrue Holiday gets and Kristaps Porzingis and so forth on that roster. So maybe roster management and construction might catch up to the Celtics maybe later. But next year, they'll be all in. The following year as well, but we're seeing the advent of all that new money splashed into the NBA, CBA, and the Celtics right now, their superstar players certainly reaping the benefits of that.
And for this series, again, it might seem like it was a broad set approach or the main narrative entering the NBA Finals, but could the best player in the series, that's Dallas's Luka Doncic, outweigh everything that Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum as a pair and the rest of Boston's balance and depth would bring in the hunt for a Larry O'Brien trophy? The answer, unanimously, almost no, despite game number 4. The Celtics still making easy work of the Mavs in only 5 games. And Luka Doncic was really good. 28 points last night, 12 rebounds, but only 2 of 9 from three. Luka scored at least 27 points in all 5 games of this series. His points prop last night, 32 and a hook. He stayed under, though, in all 5 games. And will the lasting image of Luka Doncic be game number 3 when his Mavericks team was making the ferocious comeback from being down by as many as 21 early in the fourth and final quarter, fouling out with over 4 minutes remaining, making stupid play after stupid play, and the frustration that overwhelmed in the arguing with the officials? I don't think so. He's still one of the 5 best players in the association, but did come up short, and not all his ultimate blame. He got very little help throughout this series. Kyrie Irving combined for 43 points in 3 total games in Boston. In game 3, he scored 35 at home in Dallas. It's like Kyrie Irving on the floor for Celtics championship number 18 did for Boston what he could never do while a member of the Celtics.
Yeah, and by the way, 26, what is that, 20 or 29, 6, and 9 is what Luka Doncic averaged. And the funny part about all the way through, Ben, when we're talking about the Mavericks, if they can win the series or win basketball games, the handicap was the same for me every night. Oh, Dallas needs to win? Well, Luka's got to get 40, otherwise they have no chance.
Yep.
That's not really a good recipe because, as we knew coming into the NBA Finals, the deepest team maybe in the NBA is the Boston Celtics. Superstar-wise, great bench, great coach. You get that here. We weren't saying coming into the Finals, well, Tatum better get 35 and Brown better get 30. They have no chance. Nobody said that. And they won games with those guys underperforming here. Why? Because they had other guys that could step up, like Porzingis, and Holiday showed up during the series. So they will retool that roster. Dallas isn't going anywhere. Luka Doncic is going to be an MVP threat for the next 10 years here. So I wouldn't worry too much about them. But they just need to get that, hey, Luka had an off night and scored 17. That's okay. 4 other guys stepped up. They just don't have that yet. But I'll say this. Last year's bench, not nearly as good as this year's bench from the Mavericks. Maybe they can improve it even going into next year as well.
Right. There's some promise there with Derek Lively, who had a great rookie season and a strong performance in these NBA playoffs. But I don't really want to hear that despite Boston's cakewalk through the Eastern Conference, which I will allow, that Dallas wasn't the best team out of the West. The Mavericks beat the Clippers, the Thunder, and the Timberwolves to win the Western Conference and cash that 13-1 ticket, the 7th best price on Dallas to win the Western Conference crown before the year got underway. Sure, the Denver Nuggets were not there at the end to be on the other side to give the Celtics that ultimate test as the reigning NBA champs, but Dallas earned its way to the NBA championship series through winning the Western Conference. So that's where things stand this year in the NBA campaign. We'll already look at next year later in our show to see if the Celtics can now maybe go back-to-back. Price to do so. Around MLB up next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
You got Porzingis, you got Holiday, you got Derek White. You got, literally, I would say what? 5 guys can get you 20 points in a game?
I know people will say it's, only one guy. I don't believe that, Coach, that, one guy, those days are over, in my opinion. Like, a Bill Russell, a Wilt Chamberlain.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
You rarely see a tournament champion, if I'm not mistaken, have a triple bogey on any hole and win a championship, and he still did it. To me, I mean, that was really the story.
You look at his last 8 starts, going back to the Arnold Palmer Invitation. His finishes are first, second, first, 8th, second, first.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Skeens Day number 7 in the history of Major League Baseball. That's the 7th career start for the number 1 overall pick this past summer in 2023, Pittsburgh's Paul Skeens. And when Skeens has had a start, things go pretty well for the Buccos. In the 7 MLB career starts that Paul Skeens has made, he's a perfect 4-0, lowering the ERA to 2.29 yesterday. And the Pittsburgh Pirates have won 6 of the 7 outings that Skeens has accomplished in his MLB career, including yesterday, a 4-1 victory against the Cincinnati Reds, minus 180. Minus 180. That's the juice you got to pay to back the Buccos with Skeens on the bump, but he's made them look good in 6 of the 7 starts.
And by the way, his past 2 starts, too, when he left the game, the bullpen has been very, very good behind him. I think if you remember the last time, that 2-1 victory here, which the bullpen held on and didn't give up that lead. And certainly, while that game was tied, we were able to win that game. Take a look at this one. Skeens in the top of the first inning does give up the run, but settles in and doesn't give anything else up over the next 6 innings. And the offense came through. By the time you were through that first inning yesterday, the 3-1 lead, and that was all she wrote. Another run added in the bottom of the second inning, which gave them the 4-1 lead. And that was it. That was the final score. But also, take a look at this game where I was handicapping because I thought Spires would be a decent effort yesterday. He really wasn't. 6 innings pitched, 7 hits, 4 earned runs. Somewhat of a quality start, but I thought I was dead in the water with 5 runs over the first 2 innings when I only had 8 to deal with. And still, that game ends up 4-1 because the bullpens on both sides were actually very good yesterday. Interesting way it broke down, but this is great news for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Have some really good young flamethrowers. And with the advent of the extra wild card just a few short years ago, this team should be competitive throughout the summer, inching back closer to 500 in the same division. Now you see the Reds at 34 and 38. So the Pirates now ahead of the Cincinnati Reds.
And when you look at the National League Central, it's a very compelling division. The St. Louis Cardinals have won 7 of their last 10. They're now a game above 500. Welcome to the winning ways in the Lou, but they're still 5.5 games back of the Milwaukee Brewers. These Pirates 7 games back, but there's a lot of optimism inside PNC Park when you have Jared Jones and Paul Skeens, the 2 rooks at the top of the rotation. So Paul Skeens now, in 6 of the 7 starts that he has made, has recorded at least 7 strikeouts. In all of those 6 games where Skeens has recorded 7 Ks, the Pittsburgh Pirates have been on the winning side. But yesterday, the K prop was 7.5 for Skeens, where the under had the plus money, where in previous starts, the over had the plus money, but that has now flipped. And this was against a good Cincy team that, yes, is 4 games below 500 overall, but has won 14 of their last 22. Now we look at the NL Rookie of the Year odds, where Skeens has grown closer and closer to Shota Imanaga for the Chicago Cubs, plus 105. Imanaga is still the favorite. But if Skeens pitches this way the rest of the summer, depending on how long that leash is that the Buccos have him on, you got to think with the narrative and the notoriety that Paul Skeens is going to win this award when all is said and done.
Yeah, he's riding a rocket ship right now. There's some really good names out there, too. Mason Wynn has been very, very good for the Cardinals this season. Same thing with Jackson Merrill. Every time I look up on my app here for the San Diego Padres, it feels like he's factoring in with a home run and or an RBI. And then you still have Jared Jones, young pitcher there on the same staff as Pittsburgh. But I do think I agree. Imanaga and Skeens coming down the stretch are going to make the difference. But you're right about this. It's just a matter of how long you want to pitch Paul Skeens. Because in the grand scheme of things, right, you're not looking at Paul Skeens saying, boy, we have to get him this Rookie of the Year trophy lefty and maybe put an extra 20 to 30 innings on his arm at the end of the year when maybe the Pittsburgh Pirates aren't even playoff eligible at that point. We'll see how this one plays out. But that's it. Like, Shota Imanaga, I don't think is ever going to get shut down throughout the season for the Cubs, regardless of record. There's a really good chance Paul Skeens does that. And just to bring back a few short years ago, Jacob deGrom was having one of those seasons for the New York Mets that you thought he might wind up with a 1 or less than 1 ERA. He got injured, and Kevin and I used to joke about this, saying, you know what? And we didn't know he was going to get injured. He could probably get injured in August and still walk away with the Cy Young and or MVP. Well, he did get injured. In like 2 weeks, he wasn't even on the board anymore, and nobody cared about it. So you can't say, like, hey, as long as Skeens is really dominant through August and then misses his final 5 to 6 starts, he won't win Rookie of the Year at that point, no matter how dominant he is. He can't get shut down to win that award, but I think your point's valid. If he doesn't, he's probably going to win it.
Shota Imanaga, by the way, for Chicago, man, the Cubbies are struggling. They were 5 games above 500, 27-22 on May 21st. In less than a month, they have gone 7-17. And the story yesterday inside the friendly confines, what we have seen all year long, the Cubs up 6-3 at the end of 7 innings and lose 7-6 against the San Francisco Giants. Thairo Estrada, a 3-run shot in the top of the 9th. I think I shared the stat last week. The Cubbies entered a game at 33-35 before the middle of the week was done. If the season and games in Major League Baseball were just 7 innings, the Cubs would be 49-19. Continue the narrative yesterday at Wrigley. Tough stuff for the Cubs. Now we go to Philadelphia, where the Phils, since their return from being across the pond in London, had lost 5 of their last 7, had dropped both of the series since returning from London last weekend, needed to turn the tide back in Philadelphia. They do just that. 2 home runs out of Kyle Schwarber, 3-run shot out of Alec Boehm. He had 3 ribbies. And Trey Turner, in his return to the lineup, a couple of base knocks as well. Philadelphia wins 9-2 in the opener against San Diego.
Yeah, 18 hits they pound out yesterday. I had 2 RBI chances in this game. One was Kyle Schwarber, got that early with his 2-run home run, also added another one, but also had Bryce Harper. Here's something that you're normally not going to see in Major League Baseball. A Bryce Harper double off the wall with Trey Turner on base, and it doesn't amount to an RBI. So you know Trey Turner is still a little bit lingering effects here in the Philadelphia Phillies, not wanting to push that extra gear just yet, but he's solid enough to play and had a great defensive play yesterday, turning a double play late in that game and added those 2 hits. But that's a tough one. Anytime you see that box score and say, I'm not going to tell you how this game went, but Bryce Harper's going to get a double and Trey Turner's going to be on base, you can usually pencil that in as an easy RBI chance. I was shocked when it happened, disappointed, but that's the way it is. And by the way, Schwarber, Turner, and Harper, each with 2 hits there. The boys are back in town and feeling good.
The Padres swept by the New York Mets, and that's probably Grimace's fault, but San Diego has struggled in the month of June, just 6-10. We'll continue to go around Major League Baseball. On the other side of the break, not a ton of offense yesterday in Atlanta, but the Braves get a win. Reese Olson trying to get some help offensively out of Detroit. Hasn't been the case this year. More MLB next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
You got Porzingis, you got Holiday, you got Derek White. You got, literally, I would say what? 5 guys can get you 20 points in a game?
I know people will say it's, only one guy. I don't believe that, Coach. one guy, those days are over, in my opinion. Like, a Bill Russell, a Wilt Chamberlain.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
You rarely see a tournament champion, if I'm not mistaken, have a triple bogey on any hole and win a championship, and he still did it. To me, I mean, that was really the story.
You look at his last 8 starts, going back to the Arnold Palmer Invitation. His finishes are first, second, first, 8th, second, first.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
So, as we continue to recap Major League Baseball from a Monday card that featured only 9 games, but some interesting talking points around the bigs, the Atlanta Braves actually had a really good offensive weekend in Tampa against the Rays, scoring 6 runs in all 3 games, barely missing out in a sweep in the finale at the Trop, but did when the weekend set. Yesterday, not a ton of offense. In fact, we were scoreless until the 6th inning, but it wasn't the Braves offense that let them down. Atlanta victorious 2-1, solid outing from Max Fried, and Ozzie Albies' solo shot in the home half of the 8th inning, was the difference. The Braves winning 2-1 is greater than a $2 home favorite on the money line. The story, though, DRS, Reese Olson has struggled for Detroit in the month of June. Yesterday, not the case. 6 innings of shutout work, only allowing 4 hits and 8 Ks. The Tigers just don't hit when he's on the bump, and they didn't yesterday as well in the ATL.
No, certainly. And this is one of those things that you're now going to take a look at with the Braves. This is the new millennium for them. It used to be in the past. And again, when I say the past, like a couple months ago in the last 2 years, this lineup would able to just hit their way to victory no matter what their starting pitching staff did. It was almost like, hey, if we get a good start out of them, that's just a bonus. But we know we're going to put up 5 to 6 runs on a night-to-night basis. That hasn't been the case, but they're still winning games, 39-31. I don't know if they can make a dent in that Phillies lead. And maybe there was a chance over the past week and a half for them to do that as the Phillies struggled, splitting that London series, then dropping back-to-back series against Boston and Baltimore, but now winning at home against San Diego. They really didn't make up all that much ground, but this is the way the Braves are going to have to win those baseball games. I do believe the Braves will be fine over the summer, and fine meaning I don't think they're going to challenge for the NL East. I don't think they're going to win the pennant if they do make the playoffs, and I do expect them to make the playoffs, but they'll be a competent team. But this is the new Braves right now. Kalanick in that leadoff spot as opposed to, superstar players like Ronald Acuna. They're just trying to make do right now until that front office can figure out what this staff is going to look like, what this lineup's going to look like, and add the appropriate pieces to try to make that push.
Yeah, the biggest story right now in MLB, that is the New York Mets. 14-2, the victory in Texas yesterday in their opener in Arlington. Make that 6 wins in a row for the New York Mets. 6 straight wins that coincide with Grimace throwing out the first pitch at Citi Field on Wednesday. Since that has happened, the Amazons have won all 6 games. But in the month of June, the New York Mets have been sensational as well. 10-4, 10 victories in their last 12 games, and they got all the Rangers early and often yesterday. 7 runs by the end of the second, 6 in the second inning alone. Frankie Lindor, Pete Alonso, multiple RBIs. Brendan Nimmo, 4 RBIs yesterday. And the Mets have won 6 in a row, 14-2, the victory over the Rangers.
Yeah, and so many times you see it. You get those 7 runs in the first 2 innings, then you just go an easy street the rest of the way. Maybe that home team can make a comeback, but that wasn't the case. After it was 7-2, like, okay, Texas got a few back. The next 3 innings, 2-2-1 for the New York Mets, effectively putting this game away for sure. But I like what I see out of the Mets, particularly in that lineup. And as I said today, they have another good hitting spot and hitting situation. But if Lindor, who, again, we're talking about one of those players that should be hitting around 300 on a year-to-year basis, just hasn't played that well to open the season. 4 hits yesterday, 2 RBI, up to 240 here as an average. Nimmo's only hitting 240, but JD Martinez, one of those really good pickups here, hitting close to 300 on the season. And then, of course, Pete Alonso, 3 hits yesterday, which included the 2 RBI, up to 239 on the season. I'm not saying the Mets are dead in the water and they can't do anything throughout the months of the summer. The wild card always going to keep you in it with a deep pockets owner. Maybe you can make some moves at the deadline and trade for some pieces here. But this is a pretty good stint, I should say, for the Mets, stunting on the Texas Rangers. And I think they might do it again today. Yeah. I think they might do it again today.
Well, I was going to say no stunt because Grimace is the real deal for the New York Mets. He threw out the first pitch. Of course, the McDonald's character from Sesame Street, I believe. I'm not even entirely sure.
I don't think he's from Sesame
Grimace threw out.
Street.
No. Just the McDonald's guy. All right, just making sure he's a McDonald's guy. All right, sorry. Grimace threw out the first pitch at Citi Field on Wednesday. 6-0 for New York since that point. You saw the run differential. 45 runs scored, only 16 allowed. The Mets still 3 games below 500. Warmer weather all around the country. A lot of offense. That included yesterday in Denver at Mile High inside Coors Field. The Dodgers win -166 as a road moneyline favorite with a total of 12 at Coors Field. 14 runs scored. The Dodgers victorious 9-5. Freddie Freeman, DRS, had 6 ABs yesterday, recorded 5 walks, scored a couple of runs for LA as well.
How about that if you just rolled it and say, hey, I want to get 3+ walks in that game? What that pay would have done is specifically 5, but who would ever get 5 walks in the game? Probably not going to see that again. But also keep in mind, a really good start out of James Paxton. By the way, Mets, go out there and get the Hamburglar for your next homestand. Let's roll.
Ooh, just keep it rolling. Hour 2 up next.